Some things don't retire. They just wait for one last reason to fight. Rain crashed against the steel bridge hard enough to blur the city lights behind me. My knees hit the wet pavement as I dropped beside Rex. His breathing was shallow. Slow. The black and tan fur around his shoulder was soaked dark from the storm, and my hands wouldn't stop shaking no matter how hard I tried to hold him together. Police sirens echoed somewhere across the river, bouncing through the fog like ghosts that didn't know where to go. "Hey," I whispered, pressing my forehead against his. "Stay with me, partner." Rex looked at me the same way he always had. Calm. Loyal. Like I was still worth following. 3 days earlier, the army told me my time was over. 38 years old. 8 deployments. Too many sleepless nights. Too many pills sitting untouched beside my sink. The colonel slid the retirement papers across the desk without looking me in the eye. "You served your country honorably, Sergeant Cole." Honorably. Funny word. They say it when they want to bury what really happened. Then he handed me another file. K9 Unit Rex. Retired from active service. I stared at the photo clip to the folder. Brown eyes. Torn left ear. White scar above the nose from an explosion in Kandahar 4 years ago. The same explosion that killed half my team. "He's too old now," the colonel said quietly. "He deserves peace." Peace. Rex spent his whole life protecting people who forgot his name the second they stopped needing him. I signed the papers anyway. Didn't argue. Didn't fight. That part of me was already exhausted. An hour later, I walked through the front gates carrying one duffel bag and a bottle of cheap whiskey stuffed inside my coat pocket. The rain had just started when I heard barking behind me. Sharp. Desperate. I turned around and saw 2 guards running across the yard. And behind them, Rex. He cleared the security barrier like it meant nothing. 12 years old and still moving like loyalty was stronger than pain. He stopped right in front of me, chest heaving, rain dripping from his fur. I looked down at him for a long second. "You should have stayed," I muttered. Rex sat beside. "My boots anyway." Like he had already made his decision. That night, neither of us slept. My house outside Chicago felt colder than I remembered. Empty beer bottles still lined the kitchen counter from weeks before. Dust covered the framed photos I never had the courage to throw away. Around 2:13 a.m., Rex suddenly lifted his head. His ears twitched toward the hallway. Then came the growl. Low. Quiet. Wrong. Not fear. Warning. Every nerve in my body woke up at once. I reached for the pistol locked inside the nightstand just as footsteps creaked outside the front door. Slow footsteps. Careful footsteps. Someone who knew exactly where I lived. You can learn a lot about a man by watching what his dog fears. Rex feared nothing. The footsteps stopped outside my front door around 2:14 in the morning. Rain rolled down the windows in crooked lines while the old ceiling fan turned above me with a slow clicking sound that suddenly felt too loud. Rex stood frozen in the hallway, muscles tight beneath his dark fur, staring straight at the entrance like he already knew who was out there. I moved carefully toward the kitchen, gripping the pistol low beside my leg. The house smelled like old coffee, wet wood, and the storm pushing against the walls. Every instinct I had spent years building overseas came rushing back all at once. Slow breathing. Quiet steps. Listen first. Move second. Another sound came from the porch. Not knocking. Scratching. Deliberate. Like somebody testing the lock. Rex growled again, deeper this time. The kind of sound that starts in the chest before it reaches the teeth. Then silence. Complete silence. Even the storm outside seemed to pause with it. I waited near the hallway for almost 30 seconds before finally stepping toward the front window. The porch light flickered weakly across the rain. Nobody there. No car. No movement. Just darkness and water pouring off the roof gutters. But Rex would not back down. His eye stayed fixed on the door. That was when I noticed the envelope lying on the porch floor. White paper against wetwood. My stomach tightened instantly. I opened the door slowly while Rex pressed against my leg. Cold rain hit my face the second the wind pushed through. The envelope had my name written across the front in black ink. Ethan Cole. No return address. No stamp. Just my name. I carried it inside and locked the deadbolt behind me. Rex followed so close his shoulder brushed against my knee. My hands felt heavier than they should have while opening the envelope. Inside was a single photograph. Old. Folded. Water damaged around the edges. I froze the second I saw it. For men standing beside an armored truck overseas. My old unit. Me. Travis. Miller. Ortega. All smiling like we still believed we were coming home. But someone had drawn a black X across every face except mine. On the back of the photo was one sentence. You were never supposed to survive. The room suddenly felt 20 degrees colder. I stared at the handwriting while memories slammed into me like broken glass. Smoke in the desert air. Radio static. Screaming metal. The explosion. I had spent for years convincing myself it was an ambush gone wrong. A tragic mistake. But deep down, some part of me always knew. Somebody sold us out. Rex suddenly stepped closer and sniffed the photograph. Then his ears lifted sharply toward the back door. A second later, headlights swept across the kitchen wall from outside. A black SUV rolled slowly past my house without stopping. No plates. Tinted windows. Rex moved in front of me instantly, protecting me before I even asked. And for the first time since leaving the army, I realized the war might not be over after all. There is a moment when your instincts stop feeling like fear and start feeling like memory. The black SUV disappeared into the rain without a sound, but Rex stayed frozen near the kitchen window long after the headlights were gone. His ears were forward. Eyes locked on the darkness outside like he could still smell whoever had been inside that vehicle. I checked every room in the house twice before sunrise. Windows secure. Back door locked. Nothing missing. But the silence felt wrong now. Like somebody had already stepped inside my life and rearranged the air without touching a thing. Around 6 in the morning, the storm finally weakened. Grey light spilled through the clouds. Over the woods behind my property while the coffee maker rattled on the counter beside me. Rex lay near the front door instead of his bed. Guarding. Watching. Waiting. I stared at the old photograph again while the coffee turned cold in my hands. For men smiling beside an armored truck under desert heat. Back when we still joked about going home. Back when Travis carried pictures of his daughter in his vest pocket. Back when Miller kept talking about opening a fishing charter in Florida after retirement. They never made it home. I did. Sometimes survival feels less like luck and more like punishment. Rex suddenly stood up and walked toward the photo. He sniffed the bottom corner twice before giving a quiet growl. My eyes narrowed. There was something smeared near the edge of the paper. Dirt maybe. No. Grease. Black industrial grease. The kind used around shipping docks and freight equipment. My chest tightened slowly. For years ago, before our convoy got hit overseas, we had stopped near a private cargo yard outside Kandahar to inspect an incoming shipment. I remembered the smell now. Oil. Salt water. Hot metal. The same smell clinging to the photograph sitting in my kitchen. Someone connected to that mission had sent this message. Someone close enough to know exactly what happened. I grabbed my jacket and keys without thinking twice. Rex was already standing beside the door before I even called his name. 20 minutes later, my truck rolled through downtown Chicago under a sky still heavy with rain clouds. Morning traffic crawled past wet sidewalks and flashing crosswalks while Rex sat quietly in the passenger seat, staring out the window. I drove toward Navy Pier first. Old habit. Most freight movement near the lake passed through warehouses east of the river before sunrise. If somebody wanted to stay invisible, that part of the city gave them plenty of places to disappear. We parked near an abandoned loading yard surrounded by rusted chain-link fences and broken floodlights. The second I stepped out of the truck, Rex changed. His posture stiffened instantly. Nose lifted into the cold wind. Then he pulled hard toward Warehouse 14. I followed him through puddles reflecting faded orange security lights until we reached a side entrance hanging slightly open. My pulse slowed the way it always did before danger. Calm. Controlled. Empty. Rex stopped suddenly beside the doorway and looked back at me. Then I saw it. Fresh tire tracks leading inside. And beside them, a military boot print still wet from the rain. Old soldiers notice the details everybody else ignores. The warehouse smelled wrong the second I stepped inside. Not abandoned. Not empty. Fresh motor oil drifted through the cold air beneath the heavier scent of lake water and rusted steel. Somebody had been here recently. Maybe minutes ago. Rex moved ahead of me carefully, paws silent against the concrete floor while weak morning light slipped through broken windows 30 feet above us. Rows of shipping containers stretched through the darkness like giant shadows frozen in place. Somewhere deeper inside the building, metal clanged softly. One sharp sound. Then silence again. My hand tightened around the flashlight while my pulse slowed into that dangerous kind of calm I remembered too well. The kind that usually came before everything changed. Rex suddenly stopped near a stack of old cargo pallets and lowered his head toward the ground. I walked over carefully and saw what caught his attention. A cigarette. Still warm. I touched the filter with 2 fingers. Fresh. Whoever was here knew we were close. Then Rex looked up sharply toward the second-floor catwalk running above the warehouse offices. His growl returned instantly. Low. Focused. Directed at someone he recognized. Easy, I whispered, though I was not sure if I meant him or myself. We climbed the metal staircase slowly. Every step echoed through the empty building like a warning shot. Halfway up, I noticed something hanging from the railing ahead. A silver military tag spinning gently in the wind coming through the broken windows. My stomach tightened the second I picked it up. Sergeant Daniel Ortega. My old teammate. Dead for 4 years. Except the tag was clean. Too clean. Somebody had polished it recently. A sound came from the office above us. A chair scraping across the floor. Rex exploded. Forward before I could stop him. I followed fast, pushing through the office doorway just in time to see a figure disappear through the opposite exit. Tall man. Dark jacket. Military posture. He moved fast despite the rain slicking the catwalk outside. Stop! I shouted, but the man never looked back. Rex chased him across the narrow steel walkway overlooking the warehouse floor while I pushed through after them. Then the stranger dropped something behind him. A folder. Thick. Heavy. Paper scattered across the wet metal floor as the man vanished down a ladder into the lower loading docks. By the time I reached the edge, he was gone. Only the sound of a truck engine fading somewhere outside remained. Rex stood near the ladder breathing hard, staring into the darkness below like he wanted to keep chasing. But my attention locked onto the papers spread across the catwalk around my boots. Shipment records. Cargo routes. Photographs. Names. Then I saw the symbol stamped across the top page. Black River Logistics. My chest went cold instantly. For years ago, Black River handled transport support during our final operation overseas. The company vanished 6 months later after a federal investigation nobody ever explained publicly. I flipped another page and felt my throat tighten. There was a photograph clipped inside the folder. Grainy. Distant. Taken only days ago. Me standing outside my house with Rex beside me. Someone had been watching us long before the envelope arrived. Rex suddenly stepped closer and pressed against my leg quietly. Then I noticed something else written across the bottom of the photograph in black ink. He remembers what you did. Dogs do not lie about people. Humans do it every day. The words written across the photograph stayed burned into my head the entire drive back from the warehouse. He remembers what you did. Rain streaked across the windshield while Chicago disappeared behind us in grey silence. Rex sat upright beside me, eyes fixed on the road ahead like he understood every mile was pulling us closer to something neither of us could stop anymore. I kept replaying the last mission in my head over and over. The convoy. The cargo yard. The explosion that turned midnight into fire and smoke. For 4 years I blamed myself for surviving. But now another thought kept crawling into my mind like poison. What if Rex saw something that night nobody else did? Around noon, we stopped outside an old diner near Route 14 about 40 miles west of the city. The kind of place with cracked red booths, faded coffee signs, and truckers who minded their own business. I needed distance from Chicago. Distance to think. The waitress behind the counter smiled nervously when Rex walked in beside me. Most people either feared military dogs or respected them immediately. Sometimes both. Beautiful shepherd, she said softly while pouring coffee into my cup. Retired service dog. I nodded once. Something like that. Rex stayed close beside my booth instead of lying down. Alert. Watching every person who entered the diner. The waitress set down a plate of eggs and toast in front of me, but I barely touched it. My eyes stayed locked on the folder stolen from the warehouse. Shipment manifests. Offshore account numbers. Names blacked out with thick marker. Then one page stopped me cold. A delivery schedule from 4 years ago. Same week as our final operation overseas. Same cargo yard. Same shipping company. But one line had been highlighted in red ink. Special transfer authorized by Commander Harold Vale. My throat tightened instantly. Harold Vale. Retired colonel. Decorated officer. The man who handed me my retirement papers less than 72 hours ago. Suddenly every conversation we ever had sounded different in my head. Every pause. Every careful look. Every time he told me to let the past go. Rex suddenly stood up beside the booth. Not growling this time. Focused. His eyes locked onto the front window. A black sedan had just parked across the road. Engine still running. Tinted windows. My hand slowly moved beneath the table while my pulse steadied itself. The driver never stepped out. He just sat there watching the diner through the rain. Watching me. Rex pressed closer against my leg. Then something happened that made the air leave my lungs completely. The sedan window rolled down halfway. Just enough for me to see the man inside. Grey hair. Sharp jawline. Calm expression. Colonel Harold Vale. He lifted a coffee cup slightly toward me from inside the car like we were old friends passing each other on a quiet afternoon. Then he drove away without a word. I rushed outside into the cold rain, but the sedan disappeared down the highway before I could even reach the truck. Rex stood beside me silently while water soaked through my jacket. And for the first time in years, I realized somebody powerful had been controlling this story from the beginning. The worst betrayals are the ones that smile at you first. I drove for nearly 2 hours after seeing Colonel Vale outside that diner, but the feeling never left my chest. That cold pressure sitting behind my ribs like my body already understood something my mind still refused to accept. Rex rested quietly in the passenger seat while highway lights streaked across the windshield one by one beneath the darkening sky. Chicago waited ahead of us again. Loud. Grey. Restless. The city looked different now. Every black sedan felt suspicious. Every reflection in every storefront window made me check twice. By the time we reached my house, rain had started falling again. Thin and steady. The kind that makes the world feel smaller. I stepped inside carefully, scanning every room before locking the door behind me. Nothing disturbed. Nothing missing. But Rex still would not relax. He moved through the hallway slowly, nose low to the floor like he was tracking a scent buried beneath the wood itself. Then he stopped near the fireplace. His ears lifted sharply. I walked over and noticed something wedged beneath the old wooden cabinet beside it. A small black recorder. My stomach dropped instantly. Somebody had been inside my house while we were gone. I pressed play slowly. Static crackled through the speaker for 2 seconds before a familiar voice filled the room. Colonel Vale. Calm. Controlled. If you are hearing this, Ethan, then it means Rex led you exactly where I expected. My pulse slowed dangerously. Rex stared at the recorder without blinking. You always trusted the dog more than your own instincts. That is why you survived overseas. And that is why you are still alive now. I felt my jaw tighten. Vale continued speaking like he was sitting across from me having a casual conversation. There are people inside Black River who believe Rex remembers the cargo transfer from Kandahar. They think the dog can identify them. Fear makes powerful men careless. I looked down at Rex slowly. The old shepherd remained perfectly still beside my boots. For years ago, Vale said quietly, your unit accidentally discovered shipments connected to officials who should never have been involved overseas. Your team was never supposed to inspect that convoy. My chest tightened harder with every word. The explosion was not random. And somebody inside your command structure made sure no investigation ever reached the truth. Silence filled the room for a moment before Vale spoke again, softer this time. They are watching you now because they believe Rex still remembers the scent of the man responsible. The recording clicked off suddenly. Just like that. No explanation. No warning. Only silence again. Rain tapped against the windows while the clock above the kitchen sink ticked louder than normal. Then Rex moved. Fast. He rushed toward the back door with a deep growl rumbling through his chest. Headlights flashed across the yard outside. More than one vehicle this time. I killed the lights instantly and stepped toward the window carefully. 3 black SUVs rolled slowly down the dirt road leading toward my property. No sirens. No markings. Just dark glass and engines growling beneath the rain. Rex positioned himself directly in front of me without hesitation, protecting me before I even raised a hand. Then the first SUV stopped at the edge of the driveway. And someone stepped out holding an umbrella beneath the storm. Even from 50 yards away. I recognized Colonel Vale immediately. Some men knock on your door because they want answers. Others knock because they already know the truth. Colonel Vale stood at the edge of my driveway beneath a black umbrella while rain poured around him in silver lines. The headlights from the SUVs behind him cut through the storm and lit the trees surrounding my house like prison bars. Rex stayed directly in front of me near the dark living room window, silent but tense, every muscle ready. I watched Vale carefully through the glass. Same straight posture. Same calm expression. The kind of face built to make people trust him before they realized they should not. Then he slowly raised one hand. Not threatening. Not nervous. Just patient. Like a man arriving exactly where he expected to be. Ethan, his voice called through the rain. We need to talk. I almost laughed hearing those words. For years of silence. For years of funerals and nightmares and unanswered questions. And now he wanted to talk. I opened the front door halfway without lowering my guard. Cold wind rushed into the hallway immediately. Vale studied me for a long second before his eyes shifted toward Rex. Something changed in his face then. Not fear. Regret. He still remembers me, Vale said quietly. Rex gave a low growl deep in his chest. Vale nodded slightly like he expected it. I was hoping he would. Lightning flashed across the sky behind him, illuminating the rain-soaked driveway for half a second. The men standing near the SUVs remained perfectly still. Security detail. Former military by the way they carried themselves. You brought an army to my house? I asked coldly. Vale sighed tiredly. I brought protection. From who? He looked at me carefully before answering. From the people who killed your team. Silence stretched between us while rain hammered against the roof above. Every instinct inside me screamed not to trust him. But another part of me remembered the recording. The warning. The fear in his voice when he talked about Rex. Vale stepped closer to the porch slowly. You deserve the truth, Ethan. Funny, I muttered. You buried it pretty well. His eyes lowered for a moment. Older now. More exhausted than I remembered. Some truths get people killed. Rex suddenly barked once toward the darkness beyond the driveway. Sharp. Urgent. Vale reacted instantly, turning toward the woods beside my property. So did the men near the SUVs. Then I saw it too. A small red light flickering between the trees. A laser sight. Moving. Searching. Every muscle in my body locked tight immediately. Inside, Vale snapped sharply. The next few seconds blurred together in pure instinct. Men rushed for cover. Car doors slammed. Rain exploded across the porch while Rex lunged forward beside me with furious barking shaking through the night air. Vale grabbed my shoulder hard and pulled me backward into the house just as headlights suddenly burst through the trees beyond the property line. Another black SUV crashed through the mud road at full speed toward the driveway. Different vehicle. Different people. The men outside reached for weapons immediately, but before anyone moved further, the arriving SUV slammed sideways across the entrance and blocked the entire road. Its engine died. Driver door opened slowly. One man stepped out beneath the rain. Tall. Broad shoulders. Dark coat. And the second Rex saw him, the old war dog began growling harder than I had ever heard before. You never really know what a dog remembers until he decides someone should be feared. Rain poured across the driveway while the stranger stood beside the black SUV with one hand resting calmly on the open driver door. Tall. Broad shoulders. Mid-50s maybe. Dark coat soaked by the storm. But Rex reacted like he was staring at death itself. The old shepherd moved in front of me with a growl so deep it barely sounded real anymore. Every strand of fur along his back stood upright. I had seen Rex angry before. Overseas. During raids. During explosions. But never like this. This was recognition. Colonel Vale stepped beside me slowly, eyes locked on the man in the driveway. His name is Marcus Kane, Vale said quietly. Former contractor for Black River. Kane smiled faintly through the rain when he heard his name. Not nervous. Not surprised. Still hiding behind soldiers, Harold, he called calmly. Vale ignored him. He handled private cargo security overseas. Your convoy crossed his route 4 years ago. My pulse slowed into that dangerous kind of focus again. Kane looked directly at me now. You should have stayed retired, Sergeant. Rex barked furiously the second Kane spoke. And then I understood. The voice. Even after 4 years, Rex recognized the voice connected to that night in Kandahar. Kane took another step forward beneath the storm. The dog remembers the cargo yard, Vale said beside me. That is why they wanted him gone. My jaw tightened hard. What cargo? Vale hesitated. Just for a second. But it was enough. Kane laughed quietly from the driveway. Tell him the truth, Harold. Lightning flashed overhead, washing the property in cold white light. Vale finally looked at me. Older now. Tired in a way I had never noticed before. Weapons, he admitted softly. Illegal transfers protected by people inside the government. Your team found records they were never supposed to see. My stomach turned cold instantly. So they erased us. Vale lowered his eyes. They tried. Rain hammered against the roof while silence stretched between us. Every memory from that mission came back sharper now. The rushed orders. The missing intel. The convoy rerouted at the last second. We were not sent there accidentally. We were bait. Kane stepped closer again, completely calm despite the armed men surrounding the property. You know what your problem was, Ethan? He asked. You trusted the system. Rex suddenly lunged forward with violent barking, forcing me to grab his harness before he charged into the rain. Kane stopped smiling after that. For the first time, I saw something flicker in his face. Fear. Not of me. Of Rex. Vale noticed it too. The dog can identify him, Vale whispered. That is why they kept hunting you. Kane slowly reached into his coat pocket and every man near the SUVs tensed instantly. But instead of a weapon, he pulled out a small silver object and tossed it into the mud near my boots. A military service pin. Travis's pin. My dead teammate. He begged for his daughter, Kane said coldly. Right before the explosion. Rage hit me so fast my vision blurred around the edges. Rex barked wildly beside me while rain poured down harder than ever. Then Kane looked directly at the dog one last time. Amazing animal, he muttered quietly. Too loyal to die when he was supposed to. And suddenly, before anybody moved, Rex broke free from my grip and charged straight into the storm. The people who survive. War are not always the strongest. Sometimes they're just the one somebody refused to leave behind. Rex tore through the rain so fast his paws barely touched the flooded driveway. Rex! I shouted, but the old shepherd never slowed down. Marcus Kane stepped backward near the SUV, his calm expression finally cracking for the first time all night. The men around the property moved instantly, yelling over the storm while headlights cut across the mud and trees. But Rex only saw one thing. The man connected to the night that destroyed our lives. Kane reached for the open driver door just as Rex slammed into him with enough force to send both of them crashing against the side of the vehicle. The sound disappeared beneath thunder shaking the sky overhead. I ran forward through the rain without thinking, boots sliding in the mud while Colonel Vale shouted something behind me I could not hear. Kane shoved himself away from the SUV and stumbled backward toward the woods beside the road. Rex stayed between him and me, barking furiously despite the exhaustion weighing on his aging body. 12 years old. Retired. Aching joints every morning. But still standing like he was back overseas protecting his team one last time. Kane looked at Rex with something close to panic now. Call him off, he shouted. I stopped a few feet away, breathing hard while rain soaked through my jacket. You should have left us dead, I said coldly. Kane laughed once, bitter and tired. You still do not understand. Lightning flashed again, illuminating his face clearly for the first time. Older scars. Sleepless eyes. A man who had spent years running from his own choices. The convoy was carrying evidence against people far above me, Kane admitted quietly. Your team arrived early. Everything fell apart after that. Vale stepped closer beside me beneath the storm. You murdered soldiers to protect criminals. Kane looked straight at him. No, Harold. We protected a system that would have destroyed all of us. Silence hit harder than the thunder after those words. Because somewhere deep down, I knew he believed it. Rex growled again, lower this time, holding his ground between us. Kane stared at the dog for a long moment before shaking his head slowly. Amazing animal, he whispered. For years later and he still remembers the scent of fear. Then distant sirens echoed across the highway beyond the trees. Real police this time. Somebody must have reported the convoy of black SUVs tearing through the storm. Kane heard them too. He slowly raised both hands away from his coat and looked at me one final time. "You want the truth, Ethan?" he asked quietly. "Follow the money. Not the bodies." The red and blue lights grew brighter through the rain. Men near the SUVs began backing away toward their vehicles. The night was ending whether any of us wanted it to or not. Rex finally stepped backward toward me slowly, breathing hard, soaked from head to tail. I knelt beside him immediately, gripping his thick wet fur while he leaned against my chest. His heartbeat was fast but steady beneath my hand. Still fighting. Still protecting me. Even now. Vale stared at us silently for a long moment before speaking. "They tried to erase every witness from that mission," he said quietly. "But they forgot one thing." I looked down at Rex beside me. The old shepherd lifted his tired eyes toward mine while rain rolled off his scarred face into the mud below. Vale exhaled slowly. "Loyalty remembers everything."